Hello, and welcome to the Education Seminar for Chapter Leaders on Succession Planning and the Election Cycle. To understand succession planning at the basic level, let's first define succession and planning. As you may suspect, succession is a sequence of events or persons following a previous sequence of events or persons. It is effectively the order of things or people in the course of time. Planning is the actual process of making a plan. But what does succession planning mean? The Oxford Dictionary defines succession planning as the process of training and preparing employees in a company or an organization so that there will always be someone to replace a senior manager role when they leave. But what does that mean in the practice and context of association boards like the ones at ASID? Well, I took to the interwebs for a little light research. Is it a strategy or a process, an action or a suggestion? Is it a responsibility required for sustainability? Is it really a noun? We'll answer all those questions in just a moment. The good news is my research produced results and there's a lot out there. However, not all information on the web applies to the context of chapter succession at ASID specifically, nor does it offer a cohesive definition of what's involved. These bullet points offer some expanded definitions that resonated with ASID's bylaws, policies, and practices the best of all the definitions in my experience. Now, to answer those questions above, yes, it's all of those things. It's a strategy, a process, it's an action and a suggestion. It's also a responsibility required for sustaining operations. And it's more than that as well. And so I'll offer the definition of succession planning at ASID as follows. Succession planning is the strategy and process for operational sustainability achieved by both identifying and developing people for business critical leadership and other roles to ensure a smooth transition and maintain organizational continuity. But who's responsible? And then how do we do it? That part's a little trickier. The definition of succession planning at ASID, however, is the perfect backdrop as I briefly talk through the who of succession planning. The who is actually everyone in the chapter. Everyone in the chapter is responsible for succession planning, and it begins with the chapter's board of directors. As the only governing body of the chapter, the board sets the tone of the member experience that members will ultimately come to expect. This is probably the most important part of succession planning. The experience one has on the board is the experience that the board provides the members and prospective members. And that experience shows up at every event and in every newsletter. It's conveyed with each sponsorship agreement and interaction, so on and so on. With every personal and professional exchange while you're on the board, you're showing the community what it means to be a member of ASID and what it means to volunteer within the organization. This is also the start of identifying and developing people. Really important to succession planning is identifying and developing your people. You're showing them what they can expect if they pursue a role within ASID or if they're asked to volunteer. So starting out on the right foot together as a board is your best chance at succession planning success. The goal for every board here is to become a high-performing team. And as a high-performing team, the board will both have and deliver a relevant, valuable, and rewarding experience for ASID that is crucial in navigating the year and recruiting your successors. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about high-performing teams. This is the how. Start the year with a board training and onboarding. Board training and onboarding offer clarity around goals, roles, processes, and interpersonal relationships. Important aspects include, but are not limited to, knowledge transfer, meaning training your successor, and talk to your chapter administrator about that too. Access to accounts and passwords as appropriate to the respective board position. Access to chapter files, including procedures, operational plans, budgets, chapter policies, etc., to name a few. It's also important that board members know and understand your fiduciary duties of loyalty, care, obedience, and confidentiality required of all board members, both individually and collectively. It's important that we practice transparency and effective communication so we can improve the workability with one another. And we also need to know and understand the governance framework within which the board operates within ASID to improve clarity for goals and roles and process. There are 4 stages to building a high-performing team. Those stages are forming, storming, norming, and performing. And succession planning is a little bit of a figure 8, a chicken or an egg situation. So to keep things simple, we're going to focus on the forming stage first, and then we'll go through the rest of those stages. The first forming stage is the chapter elections. So forming, that is identifying the who. Who are in those respective roles for the board, for the volunteer position, whether a committee or a board, etc. The second stage is storming. Storming is getting used to the policies, procedures, and each other. So really key is information transfer and knowledge transfer so that you can start to get an idea of what it is you're working with and through. And 4, norming. That's the third stage. That's getting into a groove and a flow. This norming stage happens when you start to the norming stage happens when you become familiar with your policies, your procedures, and each other and how you work well together. Stage 4 is performing. This is your well-oiled machine stage. When there is a change in people, and this is critical, when there is a change in people, there is a palpable shift in the team dynamic, and the team must begin again. So you start back at stage 1, forming. Keep this in mind as you navigate your board experience and participate in succession planning. The holistic succession planning is a bit of a figure 8, as we mentioned before, and every year ASID begins again with a new board, a new team dynamic, and a new experience. So this concludes our focus on succession planning. And next we'll move into the tactics of stage 1, forming, with our chapter elections.
The first step in forming a high-performing team at ASID is by holding elections. Elections are a bylaw requirement. To help chapters navigate this important chapter function, we've created a chapter election kit, which we'll briefly go through. Chapter leaders can access and download this document where it provides all resources for chapter operations. The main page of the kit offers the purpose and function of elections and acts as a convenient checklist to keep your chapter on track. As a reminder, elections must be completed by April of each year. The kit offers an overview of important details such as nominating committee position and a division of duties required to ensure election integrity. Nominating committee composition requires up to 5 members, the chair being the immediate past president. Nominating committees may not exceed 5 members. The division of duties means that the current board members may not be on the nominating committee, and nominating committee members may not be candidates. Further, the nominating committee is the board responsible for ensuring the board composition requirements as set by the bylaws is fulfilled. The nominating committee must have a clear understanding of the board composition mandated by ASID bylaws. As they are selecting the candidates, it is their role to ensure that the future board is in compliance as it relates to composition. For example, the bylaws and procedures both require and restrict ASID affiliate members to a minimum of 1, not to exceed 2, on the board at all times. SRBs, or student representatives to the board, an appointed position, may only hold the role of SRB on the board. There may be no more than 8 members on a chapter board, and each position may have only 1 person in place. The election cycle will determine which positions must be on the slate each year, and the terms are staggered. All chapters are on the same election cycle. As an inclusive organization, all member categories are eligible for chapter board positions, as long as members are in good standing at the time of the election and throughout a term, and are also affiliated with the chapter for which they serve, they are eligible for service. Part of the election process includes the option for the membership to petition the slate. This means that the chapter must post the slate in advance of the election. This kit contains tools to assist in the collection and dissemination of this requirement. For a petition to be valid, the chapter must receive it no later than 30 days after the slate has been announced to the membership. The petition must also be signed by no fewer than 10% of the practitioner and partner members in good standing of that chapter. The candidate vacancies are accommodated in the election process as well. In the event of a candidate vacancy, the election should still take place and the position posted as vacant with a write-in option for voters. The chapter election kit provides examples on how to list a candidate vacancy on an election ballot. Yes, go ahead, Katie. As for the first page of the election kit, the notification section doubles as a checklist. Use this as a tool to help remain on track with the election. Balloting is electronic. This means that chapters do not have to print or mail physically collect votes. All voting members or members in good standing must have an opportunity to cast a ballot, and the chapter should be prepared to print and mail paper ballots to those who specifically request a paper ballot. The election kit also includes a few forms that are required for compliance protocols at ASID, and that also acts as a tool for the chapter to execute the election. This is a nominating committee form. It lists the candidates' names, member numbers, the position for which they're being elected, and the term states. For a candidate's vacancy, as the form states, enter vacant in place of name. This form must be signed by the nominating committee members, which again is up to no more than 5 people. The nominating committee would use this form to confirm with the chapter that the candidates they have selected are members in good standing with ASID and are affiliated with their chapter. The chapters may also use this form as a resource to post the slate in advance of the election. If using this form as means of announcing and posting candidate names, please be sure to remove the member ID and the signatures before posting. The official chapter election results is similar to the nominating form. This form ratifies the election and must be sent to the ASID HQ for compliance and kept on file with the chapter. Only the nominating committee chair is required to sign it. One question we frequently get is, who should send this form to HQ from the chapter? This document may be sent to HQ by the nominating chair, chapter administrator, president, or other board member. We often receive the form among the required financial and governance compliance documents required quarterly for the chapters to receive allocation payments. The importance here is that HQ receives a copy regardless of who it is that sends it. The candidate information form is a tool for the nominating committee to collect details about the experience and qualifications of the candidates. The candidate information form should be completed by the candidates themselves. The chapters may use the form as a resource to create and announce the candidates to the membership in concert with the nominating form. I'm going to repeat that sentence. The chapters may use the form as a resource to create and announce the candidates to the membership in concert with the nominating form, as well as build the ballot. It is not required to use the candidate information form if you have another tool that works well. Candidate biographical information and interest statements are a key component for elections. If the chapter is not using this form, you should be collecting this information in another way. This form, however, In the next slide, this form, however, is required. Previous slide. Yeah, great. Okay, I'm going to start from the top. This form, however, is required and is a responsibility of the chapter to keep a signed copy in their files. This is the candidate commitment form, and it includes an NDA or non-disclosure and conflict of interest agreement, important for providing structure and expectations as well as protection. We recommend the chapter receive the signed form before elections begin. However, chapters must receive the signed form before the start of the elected or appointed term. Chapters must also get signed copies of this document from any board member who may be appointed to fill a vacancy after the term has begun. Equally important, this form lists the fiduciary duties of board members. A completed form will include these boxes as checked as well as signed. Special dispensation is a process that confirms a result in the event of a tie election where there are multiple candidates in one position. It is determined by a game of chance conducted by a member of the chapter support team in the presence of a nominating committee chair and a chapter president to ensure integrity. We wrap up our presentation on the elections by addressing a few common scenarios and questions related to the nominating committee and slate approvals. Ultimately, the board must approve the nominating committee. It is recommended that the president form their committee for the board to approve before their term ends. However, as we learned earlier, everyone is responsible for succession planning, and that includes recruitment. Committee members may self-identify, and board members may make recommendations, but the board must vote to approve the nominating committee. In the event of a nominating committee chair vacancy, the president has the authority to appoint a new chair as a part of the duties listed in the job description. Another common question is related to slate and election approvals. The election process is set up to maintain election integrity, and the division of duties is broken down as follows. The chapter board approves the nominating committee approves the candidates, and finally, the voters approve the slate.
Thank you for joining us today. As a reminder, we can be reached at chapters@asid.org should you have any questions regarding succession planning and the chapter elections process. We hope you found this information valuable as well as informative. Don't forget to download a copy of the chapter election kit in the volunteer hub. And please let us know how we did so we can continue to improve. Again, that contact information for our chapters team is chapters@asid.org. Thank you again. Have a great day.